if you've been watching my content, you might have noticed that I've been doing some videos reacting to some classic, like, breadtube video essays from, like, the start of LeftTube's, like, prominence in 2019, and before that, during, like, the end era of Gamergate. Because I really do feel like this is a golden age of left-wing content, and it's so unfortunate that so many of these same creators, a lot of them don't even make content anymore or even make content anywhere near as good, and many of them even resent the content they made during this time because they didn't like the credit they were given as de-radicalizers of people online who were falling down the alt-right rabbit hole, which is so unfortunate because content creators who are de-radicalizing people is kind of important for, like, the success of the left on a cultural level, at least, so I don't know. Anyway, one of the OG video essayists who made some of the best f***ing content back in the day was 3 Arrows. Oh my god, 3 Arrows made some banger video essays back in the day, and some of these I have not watched since, you know, my original watching them back in the day, years and years ago. And one of those videos we're going to be watching today, it's now 4 years old, almost 5 years old. It's from all the way back in 2018, November 2nd. It's called How to Fall Down, the Anti-SJW Rabbit Hole. You might notice that that title, the Anti-SJW Rabbit Hole, that is where the terminology alt-right rabbit hole or, like, rabbit hole terminology, like, this video was basically the first video with a lot of attention brought to it, or that like, the first video to get a lot of attention, I suppose you could say, that put into words the structure of conservative propaganda that was growing and just proliferating on YouTube at the time. So, unfortunately, you're not going to see a lot of content like this these days. At least I'm trying to be like that kind of content creator for nowadays, you know, political state. But I feel like looking to the past can be a good way to analyze the present and potentially even predict the future, dare I say. Anyway, let's take a look at the video. I highly recommend that you watch the original, by the way. It'll be in the pinned comment in the like down below in the when this goes up as a video on YouTube.
Hey everyone, today's video is gonna be a little different, a bit of a ramble maybe even. But first I have to get a bunch of disclaimers out of the way. Most things I say in this video are gonna be based on personal experience for a change and are not necessarily in any way representative of a broader experience of people getting invested in political YouTube. Also, when talking about this niche of YouTube.
So, okay, so I want to start by saying one of the things you might notice right off the bat with this video is that compared to a lot of modern, like, leftist content, it's not judgmental. Like, doesn't this feel like not anywhere near as, like, high horse and judgmental and above it all as a lot of modern lefty content does, especially video essay content? Like, it feels like modern video essay content is actively trying to, like, keep right-wing people that disagree with the beliefs of the creator from feeling comfortable in that community, like, constantly making comments meant to keep, like, make them click out of the video and stop watching. Like, these creators nowadays are making content specifically for and catered for exclusively people that agree with them. And whether or not, like, I don't think it has much of an effect on the outcome of the content, because the content ends up being pretty good in the end regardless, and even still has the same effect of de-radicalizing people, but it feels so different from how it used to, you know?
You're destined to make generalizations since no two content creators are really the same. So that said, what is today's video about? Well, I get a lot of people coming forward to me telling me how they used to watch various anti-SJW YouTubers and used to buy into this worldview of, say, SJWs or feminism being this huge problem, and who are also very...
Just replace SJW with woke and replace PC with cancel culture in this video. Right-wing propaganda has not changed in terms of, like, the essence of it, but the terminology they use has changed. So when you hear, like, PC culture or SJW, like, just know that's, like, a woke person, or that's, like, what they mean by cancel culture now. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. I think 3 Arrows is German. Yes, 3 Arrows is in fact German. Pretty based. We love our Germans here. The good ones, of course, not the bad Germans. There are some bad Germans. There are some famously bad Germans, in fact. Okay.
Very ashamed of their former beliefs. And I'll also talk about this report recently released by Data and Society. And regarding our first topic, I always respond with saying that there is really no reason to feel a sense of shame or embarrassment because you used to hold a set of beliefs you now deem unsubstantiated. And here's why. I, and I'm sure many others, got introduced to political YouTube about 2 to 3 years ago without even intending to. Maybe you're just looking for some tips regarding a hobby of yours, and out of the blue, you see a recommended video in the corner of the screen that's titled, let's say, Why People Hate Feminism Part 12. Now, you may not be on the right or conservative at all. Maybe you're kinda center-left because that's pretty much the default of where you live. But the image the word feminism conjures up in your head is women complaining who don't really have a reason to, or that it's just about hating men. So out of curiosity, you click the video and find out that your previous assumption was not only correct, but that it even goes further than that, with intersectional social justice warriors holding various positions of power and supposedly seeing everything through an oppressor versus oppressed mindset. So you continue to watch hours of content like this and find other creators who talk about these topics through YouTube's recommended feature or collaborations of different channels. And at first, it feels pretty good. It seems like you discovered this entire new spectrum of content that's not only
Dark Excalibur 42 just learned why I hate steak and shake fries the hard way. You ordered the fries? I told you they're the most pathetic string bean fucking, like, soggy, but also, like, crunchy in the worst way, like, not in an enjoyable way. Like, yeah, there's Shoe on Head, yay. Hey, on the bright side, Shoe on Head apologized for slandering me and lying and claiming that I was defending pedo shit a full, like, 6 months after it all happened on Keffel's show, when Keffels asked her about that, because her chat was pushing. So that's kind of like Shoe on Head having an actual genuine apology and wanting to take that back.
Informative, but also really entertaining, with different creators bringing their own personalities to the table. You learn about new viewpoints you previously weren't exposed to, and also have the ability to exchange your thoughts with a giant group of people through the comment section or subreddits. It's like you stumbled into a big community that values the same things you do. Free speech, common sense, and putting facts over emotions. It might even give you a boost in confidence seeing how laughable the opposition is and how embarrassing they behave. Instead of checking out the new Netflix series for entertainment, you watch Can't Stomp Milo on YouTube and don't even have to select a new video once one is over, since the autoplay feature just serves you more of what you enjoy. Then you might see this.
What does that remind you of? What does that YouTube autoplay feature just feeding you a line of right-wing propaganda back during the Gamergate era? What's that remind you of today? YouTube Shorts, exactly, our family. YouTube Shorts has become what Three Arrows is describing right now to the max.
This clip of Real Time with Bill Maher, where Ben Affleck calls a guy named Sam Harris a racist for seemingly just making rational arguments against the downsides of Islam. By that point in time, you know that when someone calls pretty much anything racist these days, they really don't have an argument, and that's why they resort to this kind of stuff. Not you though, you're all about being rational, no matter how controversial the topic at hand is. You're going to check out more of Sam Harris and maybe even buy a book of his. You get to learn about this video, and this video, and this video, and many, many more. Over time you see that this stuff you laughed at in cringe compilations is actually a phenomenon much more represented in mainstream culture than you would have thought at first. The left seems to have rejected the notion of being pro-worker and traded it in for identity politics and virtue signaling, which puts you somewhat on the same side as someone like Ben Shapiro. And
you guys don't, like, does this, like, sound, is there anyone in chat who wasn't, like, politically active at the time, who this just sounds unthinkable to? Like, is there anyone here who was not, who just doesn't know about this era of like, politics online, and just doesn't understand how this makes any sense? You guys ought to understand, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, all of these hardline conservative tradcon types and neocons had an entire, like, swath of ostensibly liberal and left-wing people convinced they were this new actually progressive, edgy, new, like, era of the right. Like, essentially, they were trying to convince people that a new party switch had happened, essentially. And it was now the Republicans that were becoming the hip, young, cool, counterculture, anti-establishment party. They ran... You're completely right, Hemorrhoid King. They ran the internet during their golden era. You guys can't even imagine if you weren't around for it. It's bad now because you can't look anywhere without seeing, like, full-on Nazi propaganda and fasci shit. But back then... there was no islands of, like, progressive, like, chillness that you could, like, rationality you could hang out in. It was all just that. And if there were spaces where left-wing people were congregating to discuss their ideas, they were getting incessantly raided by Nazis. And you better believe you weren't getting any sympathy for it from normies. It was everywhere.
The more you learn from all these new people you discover, the better you feel about your new political identity. People like Dave Rubin, who seemingly had the same political awakening you seem to go through, reaffirm that this is really the way things are. The uncomplicated answers these people deliver to societal problems which previously seemed impenetrable to you don't only sound agreeable, but are complementary. When Ben Shapiro says the 3 things you have to do to not screw up your life are finishing school, get a job, and not have kids out of wedlock, it feels good. You already managed to do all this stuff, or you're in the process of doing so. And while you continue to take part in the discussion around feminism, Islam, and political correctness, there's a set of beliefs that you acquire. Like Black Lives Matter is a regressive movement, or that the anti-fascists are the real fascists, or that feminism and...
Oh, that fucking those Chris Ray Gun songs. God damn. Who remembers the Gamergate era and Chris Ray Gun's Anti-SJW songs? To be fair, they went pretty hard. All right, say what you want, but Chris Ray Gun's definitely musically talented, even when he was making, like, conservative, like, songs. Like, and say what you want, but those songs are decidedly conservative. They're all about how the times are getting too crazy and we need to go back and the left has gone wild. Like, that is the core. That is what those songs are explicitly about, and I think he kind of cringes at, like, the subject matter or like how big of a deal this, I don't know. I saw him talk to Vosh about them and he kind of does cringe at them nowadays, from my understanding. I never knew about his old stuff. Well, that's why, like, so many of you guys, like, modern day discourse is being pushed by people who got their start during Gamergate. All the people who are now basically shaping modern day politics, like with the woke shit and the groomer narrative and all of that, all these people got their start online during Gamergate. Like, I watched many of them when I was younger, going through my chud, like, rightoid phase. So my having watched these figures and knowing the history behind them is pretty valuable. And like, you guys learning it is pretty valuable in dealing with these same people pushing essentially the same shit. It just sounds different nowadays.
In the Western world is an antiquated idea. Over time, the scale of this culture war gets broadened even further, and things like cultural Marxism, postmodernism, and the likes make their way into the discussion. Professor comes forward who seems to confirm everything that the people you have been listening to already say. And maybe it stops for you there. Or maybe it doesn't, and you go on to learn about things like the Great Replacement and other far-right talking points. Now,
remember, guys, this was before the Christchurch shooting happened, where the shooter wrote the manifesto, the Great Replacement Manifesto. It was literally called the Great Replacement, and for those that don't know, it was Lawrence Southern who popularized that. So, like, yeah, this was before the mass killing took place that was inspired by, like, what he's discussing right now is the path that the Christchurch shooter went down. And then the Christchurch shooting ended up happening, like, months later. This was in November. The Christchurch shooting happened in March of this was November 2018, and then the Christchurch shooting happened in March 2019, if I recall correctly. So he really, like, this video came out at a very good time. Like, people were about to be looking for stuff like this, and we're about to be thinking about radicalization online like this, and it was going to be a big topic in the media, and that being a big topic in the media is what allowed breadtube to get its start. It wasn't anywhere near as like big as Gamergate's start, but it was basically the left's Gamergate, for all intents and purposes. And fittingly, it was the left was upset about something that was actually serious, a massive, big mass killing, while the right's thing they were upset about was women in video games.
What's my problem with all of this? Well, it doesn't have to be a problem at all, since what I just described doesn't have to be the case for everyone. In my time on YouTube, though, I have seen my fair share of people who got sucked into this anti-SJW vortex and who come out of the other side as just another reactionary. That's not to say that every anti-SJW YouTuber that ever existed is a reactionary, though. They may be liberals or even leftists, for all I know. What is key here is the mindset the consumption of their content over a long period of time puts you in. Let's pick the biggest in the bunch, supposedly center-left YouTuber Sargon of Akkad as an example. What are some opinions?
This was back when, remember guys, Sargon of Akkad used to call himself center-left. He was a classical liberal.
You learn when consuming his vast amount of work. To only name a few examples, the EU sucks, feminism sucks, Brexit is good, Trump is good because he makes the left mad, that Merkel invited millions of migrants because Germans still feel guilty for the Holocaust, and that black people in the US are in a bad position due to broken families, which stems out of the introduction of the welfare state. Now, Karl might be center-left in his heart, I have no idea. But the positions he mostly advocates for and passes on to his viewership are the ones of a conservative talk radio host with the occasional far-right conspiracy theory woven in. I would say the boom of this kind of anti-feminist, anti-SJW...
Sargon's rebranded, and his new rebrand channel, I think it's called like the White Lotus Podcast or some shit like that, and that's where he makes his content now. I think he might still have the Thinkery. He's a really pretentious cunt, so I think he has an alt channel that still does pretty well. It's called the Thinkery. Oh, Lotus Eaters. Okay, yeah, it's called like the White... Yeah, Lotus Eaters podcast, yeah. I don't know how it's doing. I doubt it's like close to the top performing conservative propaganda show online right now, but I'm sure he's still doing fine. I feel like it has not been long enough for Sargon to completely fall off just, you know, by time itself kind of passing, you know? You guys tell me, though. I haven't kept up like on him.
SJW content happened right up until the election of Donald Trump, but I may be in the wrong there, since I started joining the party a bit late. What makes the spiral I described earlier so seductive, in my opinion, is that the people you are getting your politics from are very different than, let's say, a newspaper or the radio. Yep. The people on your computer screen are average Joes, often broadcasting from their own homes and who are accountable only to you and the rest of their fan base. It's a much more intimate and direct interaction than watching your average political commentator on evening TV. This kind of interaction makes it much easier to develop a parasocial relationship with the people you're getting your worldview from. Parasocial meaning a one-sided bond with a media figure, or in this case, YouTube figure. And here's where the heart of the problem lies, in my opinion. As you substitute more and more of your media diet with videos talking about how the SJWs ruin everything, you're becoming part of this hive mind of people viewing politics through the lens of what they watch on YouTube every day. You're taking on the anti-SJW identity. To you, it's a community of rational truth-tellers that don't shy away from discourse and is also often in the role of the underdog against things like the mainstream media. To me, there's really no other connection between the various anti-SJW or skeptics.
Remember, guys, one of the most consistent things that the right has clung on to, and that right-adjacent communities in the online sphere cling on to, is this idea that they are a countercultural, anti-establishment, like they're this new thing, this newfangled thing who's an underdog against the corporate establishment media or whatever. They try to make themselves out to be victims. The victimization complex of conservatives has been is a constant. It is a constant.
Skeptic YouTubers or whatever you want to call it, other than that they are against the nebulous concept of the SJW. Media scholar Daniel Kreis in the book.
Now it would be they're against the nebulous concept of woke. Like that's what that line would be if this video was made today. Because nothing, like the core of what these people say hasn't changed. It's the same propaganda. It's just the wrapping paper they've covered their bullshit in becomes recognizable after a while, so they have to change it.
Trump and the media in the chapter "The Media Are About Identity, Not Information" writes about this in the context of the 2016 presidential election. For over 60 years, political scientists and political communication scholars have consistently found that citizens know and often care little about politics. Citizens have little in the way of developed ideological frameworks for understanding politics or consistent policy preferences. They vote based on their social identities or how they perceive themselves and others, their partisan identities, and their sense of the groups they believe the two political parties represent. Politics, then, is primarily an identity-based phenomenon. One way of thinking about it is akin to sports fandom, albeit with much higher stakes. Citizens want their partisan and social group teams to be the winners and the other teams to be the losers. The political ideologies or policies at stake are largely unimportant for most Americans compared with the success of their teams they affiliate with. Now, to me, this is exactly what the anti-SJW community was about in the time period I described earlier. An example of this was the content released after the election of Donald Trump. It wasn't about how shitty it is that a conservative is now president or how good it is that Donald Trump got elected so that he can finally get rid of the ACA or DACA or any other policy position. It was about how mad the others were. It's not really about policy or even politics as a whole. You can also see this play out when someone goes against the grain, like when anti-SJW YouTuber Thunderfoot made a series of videos about Brexit in which he espoused his opposition to it. It's not like part of his audience carefully weighed.
Yeah, Thunderfoot's always been one of the more well-reasoned of the anti-SJW types. It's why he pulled out of it so early. He got out of it before it stopped being financially viable. Like, he realized it was bullshit and stopped, like, quite a bit, but with, like, wide berth before that entire, like, YouTube genre collapsed. So either he saw it coming and got out and went to making his cool science videos, or he just kind of genuinely figured out it was, like, he was in the wrong and you know, changed his mind, and it wasn't just him following the money. Or chasing the poverty.
Waited all of Thunder.
Not chasing, evading the poverty.
Thunderfoot's points and voiced their concerns or how his points were wrong in the comment section. It's limited to mass dislikes and political quips mostly, because he went against the anti-SJW dogma that part of his audience adheres to. There's no real political discussion going on here. It's limited to when anti-SJW YouTuber Thunderfoot made a series of videos about Brexit in which he espoused his opposition to it. It's not like part of his audience carefully weighted all of Thunderfoot's points and voiced their concerns or how his points were wrong in the comment section. It's limited to mass dislikes and political quips mostly, because he went against the anti-SJW dogma that part of his audience adheres to. There's no real political discussion going on here. The problem is that these creators are kinda caught between being entertainers and political commentators. You might watch a Social Justice the Musical video because it's funny and very competently made, but it also delivers a very clear...
Those are Chris Ray Gun's old music videos. God, we should do like a rewatch of those on stream at some point. I want to do a rewatch of those on stream with Chris. Do you think he'd be down for that? Like if we brought him on and we're just like, so Chris... what do you mean by that? I don't know. I feel like it would be fun to watch them with Chris and talk about that era of politics and why, like, this type of, like, song felt like it was so culturally, like it was hitting something on the head. I never agree it would be so cringe. Yeah, he probably wishes everybody forgot that these existed, but like, I don't know. I feel like it would be a good way to like, you know, sort of face their existence if it's something that bothers him. And that's an if. I don't know if it does, but it seems like it probably would. Should have him on the podcast? Yeah. By the way, me and Demon Mama need to do the first episode of our podcast pretty soon. I'd ideally be able to start it once I've got my permanent place here, but I'm probably down to start it while I'm here. I don't see why not. That's going to be exciting.
Clear political agenda. And that's usually the problem with this kind of content. You come for the laughs and the entertainment, but what sticks in your head isn't necessarily a pro-right agenda, but an anti-left one. Of course, this isn't just true for YouTube, it's a general political phenomenon. Where it gets even more worrisome, though, is when this kind of anti-SJW politics is being sold as an alternative to the mainstream media. I bet most of you remember when in February 2017 the Wall Street Journal reported on PewDiePie.
So, something you need to understand about the conservative, like, media domination of our culture during certain times is that it's really dependent on how easy it is for a given event to be weaponized by a certain side. The shooting that happened a couple days ago, was basically the best thing that's ever happened for the right. Not only did children die, and conservatives love seeing children die, so you know their little feet were kicking over that, but it was done by a trans person that they could generalize as a representation of the entire trans community. You know that conservatives were the happiest they've been in a long time when they found out the shooter was trans. And it's because they really don't have any other goal than winning. They don't care about the well-being of others. They don't care about making the world a better place. They're just sort of like, they've made being a bad person something to be proud of in their political movement. The worse of a person you can be, especially towards someone on the left or a minority, the better of a conservative you are, the better that you are at practicing conservatism. They view it that way. They really do. You know what I just realized? I am going to really regret it if I don't go out and find some wolves right now, so let's go do that. It'll make sense later.
Alternative to the mainstream media. I bet most of you remember when in February 2017 the Wall Street Journal reported on PewDiePie's ironic anti-Semitism. Now of course you can take issue with how the newspaper reported the story, but I remember very vividly how this was framed as an attack on alternative media because traditional media outlets can't keep up with people in their bedrooms. That's not my phrasing, by the way, that is taken from one of the videos. And I personally always found that quite silly, to be honest. 60% of the readership of the Wall Street Journal belongs to the upper management, are over 55 years old.
So yeah, basically, as I was mentioning before, like, it was how certain things that happened could be weaponized by a certain political side that determined where the culture was leaning politically at the time. So when PewDiePie, like, you know, did an oopsie doopsie and caused the adpocalypse, it wasn't seen as like PewDiePie is our representative as YouTubers, and he needs to like maintain a certain level of responsible decorum because like he is our representative, and if he looks bad, then we all look bad. Instead, it was like, oh, they're attacking PewDiePie. They're being snitches by bringing attention to this thing PewDiePie did. They're responsible for all the problems that we dealt with, the mainstream media. And it became a war between what was seen as like legacy, old, like, establishment media versus this new era of like, you know, creator media, right? Like content.
And have an
media.
Average net worth of $2.1 million. It's very hard to imagine for me that someone would cancel his Wall Street Journal online access, which costs $75 a year, to substitute it with watching PewDiePie videos or listen to some dude talk about how SJWs ruined the Ghostbusters reboot. And that is a good thing. Someone who limits his political...
Okay, hypers in chat if you weren't online or in the political sphere during the Ghostbusters reboot, like, stuff. I'm talking about the 2016 reboot, the one with the female cast. Was anyone here? Is there anyone here who wasn't around for that? Okay, it seems like most of you guys were here for it. Like, it was insane how much harm that movie existing did to feminism and like progressivism in the left. Like that movie like actively set humanity back like I feel like an actual measurable amount of time. Humanity was set back because of the existence of that movie.
Diet to anti-SJW content will pretty soon start seeing the regressive left behind every street corner while being blinded for the truly worrisome political developments in the real world. A good example of a person like this is displayed by the earlier mentioned Sargon of Akkad in his recent debate with Richard Carrier. To be fair though, Carl has expressed regret over how he handled the debate and ultimately made himself look stupid because the person he was debating wasn't the kind of person he imagines in his head an SJW to be, and which he sells as.
So something you have to know is that early on, these people kind of talked up their debate skills and like how they were so correct and the facts were on their side, and how if they ever got in a debate with one of these SJW leftists, they would be able to destroy them. And so then some like qualified, well-known like academic leftists started challenging them to debates. And then these anti-SJWs started getting fucking creamed, and they realized, oh shit, I need to keep it to like very like curated debate opportunities that I know are successful. Yeah, they debated Destiny and got fucking destroyed. Now they won't touch him unless it's a friendly convo. They got destroyed by Vosh, and they won't touch him. A lot of them won't debate me. Like, just knowing what their grift is enough for them to be too scared to talk to you. Like, just being media trained enough to be able to get a sentence out without your voice shaking and sounding like you're afraid is enough for them to say, nope, not debating this person. Where's a creature that I think doesn't deserve to exist? Hello, sheep. That's what they do. It is definitely worth collecting these things.
His audience. It seems a bit like Carl and his like-minded folks imagine the majority of social justice advocates like this.
Yeah, this person just sexually harassed me.
I said I'm humongous.
Yes, yeah, that's...
This fucking video, dude. This video. If you've watched my previous nostalgia, like, trip streams, you remember this video.
right. Humongous what?
Humongous.
So now you're actually pointing to yourself. You're actually pointing to your body parts, and you're actually pointing to your body parts and saying that you're humongous. You're actually doing that.
Looking at the current political landscape, though, where are all those people? Oh, right. There was this DNC candidate in January 2017 whose name you'd probably never heard of, who said white people should shut up. Well, I guess then it's all true. Pack your bags, Marxist college professors wanting to subvert Western civilization. You've been caught. Jokes aside, I can't...
A big part of it was also realizing that none of these crazy SJWs that were, you know, and let's be clear, if the title of SJW was ever going to be, like, warranted for anybody, that lady screaming humongous what in the video is absolutely, like, you know, like, that person would qualify as one. None of these people hold power. Like, you can complain as much as you want about how these SJWs are cringy or whatever, but they don't have positions of power, and you can't point to any instances in which they are, demonstrably making your life worse. Like, the most they were eventually able to point to is the idea that, like, Hollywood's making everything woke, and that's what they focus on now. And it's not as effective of a point. Oh, I need to go to see that. It's not as effective of a point as what they used to harp on, which was, like, this, you know, heavily implied existence of a like, leftist control of our society that you know was very easy to prove didn't exist.
It helped to see the resemblance of a crowd of people who just bought into a massive conspiracy theory. And this goes hand in hand with other conspiracy theories. Be it cultural Marxists wanting to destroy Western civilization, intersectionality being a weapon of the postmodernists, or that people would be jailed for accidentally misgendering someone under Canada's Bill C-16. Not that there aren't crazy people on the left side of the spectrum, but I fail to see how this minority justifies this laser focus and massive outrage. And I don't think I'm the only one noticing this. Because one criticism that frequently is brought forward towards these anti-SJW creators is their selective outrage. Why do you go nuclear on a stupid MTV video or BuzzFeed article?
You gotta remember, guys, this was back when a lot of these anti-SJW conservative figures were claiming they were centrist lefties even. Some of them claimed they were liberals. So this is pointing out, hey, if you claim to be a liberal, why this? And all it took back then was proving that these people were lying about who they were politically. And that was enough to shake the foundations of a lot of people's trust in these figures.
But failed to criticize actual legislation that has a real effect on people's lives brought forward by the right. How can you be so principled on free speech, but also like or at least not criticize Donald Trump, who repeatedly shows his disdain for it?
Yep.
In my opinion, the answer to that is partially what I said earlier about it not really being about politics, but also that being or selling reactionary positions is not a real ideology on its own. There are no political principles behind laughing at college students freaking out or endlessly talking about a caricature of social justice advocacy. To be fair, though, this whole thing isn't solely the fault of the individual creators, but also partially because of how YouTube's algorithm works and the nature of the medium. And once you have acquired a certain audience, this kind of stuff is what they expect from you. Failing to deliver on that might even make you lose a significant part of your income. And I'm sure a good portion don't have sinister motives behind their content or just somehow stumbled into this. But I'm not completely gonna miss out on some judgment in this video, and this is where we get to this report, which was recently released by Data and Society, called Alternative Influence Broadcasting the Reactionary Right on YouTube by Rebecca Lewis. The argument the report puts forward is that there is a web of conservative to far-right personalities on YouTube who frequently collaborate or appear side by side. The report claims that these reactionary YouTubers demonize and discredit orthodox worldviews and the mainstream media, which they sometimes follow up with introducing their viewership to alternative worldviews like white nationalism, which their audience is now more likely to be susceptible to because of the previous damage done by this group of reactionary YouTubers. It does not claim that everyone in this web is far-right. It claims the nature of these connections is largely irrelevant because this group of YouTubers have already set their audience up to embrace unorthodox worldviews. Now, do I think the report actually delivers enough evidence for this claim to ring true? No, I don't think so, and I wouldn't cite it trying to prove a point. I have some issues with the methodology and the presented sample sizes. That doesn't mean that the phenomenon described in the report as radicalization doesn't exist, but in my experience it works a little different. It's this dogmatic anti-leftism that sets you up to be more susceptible to right-wing talking points, partially because your image of the left stems out of a caricature sold by anti-SJW YouTubers. Repeating far-right conspiracy theories like cultural Marxism, that Heather Heyer died of a heart attack, or that Ireland plans to import 1 million Middle Easterners, all
I don't know if you guys remember this, but the Heather Heyer dying of a heart attack thing was big. For those that don't know, there was a big Nazi rally called the Unite the Right rally, and it was all about how the anti-SJWs, the moderate conservatives, the classical liberals, and the white nationalists were all going to come together, and they were going to unite the right. They were all going to come together for their mutual enemy, against their mutual enemy of the left, right? Put aside their disagreements, come together, and have a mutual protest against the left, and what the left stands for. They are, of course, all evil, but they can be evil in different ways, of course. So what ended up happening, of course, was the Nazis went wild. They were, of course, doing their whole, carrying their swastikas and their tiki torches and singing about how the Jews won't replace them and all that. And there was a big counter-protest of, lefties counter-protesting the Nazi protest. And the response from the Nazis to that was, wait a second, we want to be able to protest. We don't want you to have rights, so we're going to kill you. So one of the Nazis went ahead and drove his car into a crowd of protesters and hit a woman named Heather Heyer and killed her. She died. The car hitting her sent her flying in the air. There is footage of this. And the hit sent her into shock. And she was still alive on the scene, but the shock ended up inducing a heart attack, which killed her. Yes, it was getting hit by the car that killed her, but she did die of a heart attack, officially. That was the thing that made her not live anymore, but it was caused by the car hitting her. She was in the hospital, she was being taken to the hospital, if I recall correctly, when she passed. But the Nazis, their way of sort of talking this, because they don't want to look bad. Their whole thing at the time was this weird idea that it was the left that were the real violent ones, and the Nazis are actually just this unfortunate group of people with an unpopular opinion they're trying to express, but the left just keeps shutting them down because they don't believe in freedom of speech. It very quickly became clear that if these people are allowed to congregate, innocents will die because these people are Nazis. Wait, we kind of forgot these are Nazis we're talking about here. They're evil. And so it started to shake a lot of people's resolve on the right, the people who'd been radicalized and brainwashed into this stuff. And so the way that the right decided to sort of play this down was to say that she was just fat and died of a heart attack. And to be fair, she was overweight, but she didn't just die of a heart attack there. And the car, their claim is the car nudged her, and then she died of a heart attack because she was fat and she got scared. That is legitimately what the right claims about Heather Heyer. Yeah, one of the popular YouTubers who pushed this conspiracy theory is an anime review YouTuber named ER. This was really big back in 2019, but he made a video defending PewDiePie where he did a bunch of JQing, and he also made a reference to how Heather Heyer died of a heart attack. In his Death Note review, he was like, for example, if you wrote in the Death Note that you wanted a woman in a crowd of people to get hit by a car and die, but it wasn't possible for that to happen, then that person would simply die of a heart attack. And then, he shows on screen footage of Heather Heyer getting run over by the car from, Sky footage.
Also probably plays a significant role. The reason I bring up this report is twofold. Mainly I wanted as much people as possible from the earlier described viewer base to watch this video, so I made it look like I would endorse this flawed report, which they then could hold over my head. Put a little sneaky one on you there, but I'm sure there will be another opportunity in the near future for you folks. The second reason is that the main chunk of people named in this report who actually made a response to it even failed to criticize the primary claim of this flawed report. They just can't help themselves to instantly jump into the victimizing loop of help, I'm being smeared as far right, when the report never made that assessment. If they even read the conclusion, that is. Because most of them don't even seem to have read the entire report. One of the biggest connectors in this web, Sargon of Akkad, made a short video titled The Progressive Attack on the YouTube Political Sphere, in which he goes over a Guardian article and states at the end that he will do a live stream going through the report in detail.
I'll leave a link in the description or in the comments to a video that I'm going to do on my live streaming channel where I actually go through the entire report line by line, and we'll see exactly what it is they think, exactly how they're misrepresenting us, and exactly what they think needs to be done.
True to his reputation though, it seems like in the meantime he saw that the report is over 60 pages long, and that's a bit much to read, isn't it? So during his 2-hour live stream, he went through the report and stopped at page 14.
Right, I don't know how much longer I'm actually going to be able to go on with this, so we're basically at the end of this part. But yeah, I mean, I think we can see where this is going by now.
A YouTuber called Some Black Guy doesn't even read the report but only skims through the article mentioning it. Sticks, Hacks and Hammers 666 and Computing Forever also completely missed the point the report is trying to make. Why are you folks always so lazy? And none of the people mentioned, with the exception of Tim Pool, even tried to counter the claim that what the report calls the Alternative Influence Network serves as a pipeline from laughing at SJWs to repeating far-right talking points. Now, as I said in the beginning, this is only based on my personal observation, so take that as you will, but in my view, this pipeline is very real. We can even look at some creators and how they moved further and further to the right. For instance, Lauren Southern, who started off doing publicity stunts for the Rebel, who went on trying to stop boats in the Mediterranean, setting sail to save possibly drowning refugees.
Dude, I saw her on Twitter trying to deny this happened the other day. Someone on Twitter was like brought that up, and she like quote tweeted them saying, "Man, people are writing crazy fan fiction about me." And I so badly just wanted to reply with like the clip of her doing it, because it's on video. There's video of like the whole thing. I'm pretty sure she got banned from the UK shortly after for like, I believe it was something unrelated though, that ended up getting her banned from the UK. But yeah, like
Or the previously mentioned Computing Forever. Initially just a channel talking about tech and mocking SJWs, which quickly spiraled into everything being a Marxist conspiracy. Now let's jump to a video of his uploaded in late September 2018.
This is what happens when a society no longer values logic and reason and instead prioritizes emotionally unhinged and irrational arguments.
This was before this YouTuber took the God pill and became a Christian. Now he talks about faith and Christ and all that shit. This guy went from being like the super pretentious Rantsona avatar, like Logic Bro, atheist but still conservative and believes Christian values are still the best kind of channel, to full-on Christian like faith-based arguments type channel. Remember, these people are all nut jobs. They don't have anything to back up what they believe.
And self-entitlement. The Great Replacement is taking place across Europe through mass immigration, and the fertility rates of immigrants are far higher than ours. Once abortion is paid for through our taxes, there will be no financial barriers to getting an abortion because we will all have to pay for them, obviously.
It seems like logic, reason and rationality don't apply when it comes to far-right propaganda. But wait, there's more.
You know, it's almost like this was all by design. Anyway, this is certainly some food for thought for a lot of people.
What's the matter, Dave? Why so politically correct all of a sudden? Please tell me.
Computing Forever is a Nazi. He is a Nazi. Like, that was JQing right there. I like how it started off with, like, it just went to full JQing by the end. That's great.
Who designed the currently taking place Great Replacement? Was it the Jews? Was it Kalergi? Or the EU? Please, don't shy away from discussing your ideas in detail, even if they might be offending to some people. The previous statement also goes very well together with the video Computing Forever made regarding the Data and Society report.
They function as political influencers who adopt the techniques of brand influencers to build audiences and sell them on far-right ideology. Examples, please? Nothing. All right? I have never promoted anything far-right ever, and I can speak for myself.
Didn't take long to
The thing he said, the Great Replacement, was the name of the manifesto of the Christchurch shooter just months later.
prove that one right. Anyway, one more thing I want to talk about that came up in the context of the Data and Society report is the grouping of these creators. While I consider this web flawed and not conclusive, it's not like there isn't a point in claiming a connection between two YouTubers can serve right-wing radicalization. As an example, if you uncritically associate with or amplify someone who is obviously a far-right demagogue like Lawrence Southern or Stefan Molyneux, you are lending them some of the trust that your audience has built up to you. Why do you think an organization like Scientology is so eager to recruit famous actors who are well known? It's because they can get in on the relationship between Tom Cruise and his fans.
Yep.
So if part of your audience jumps from laughing at feminism to believing in the Great Replacement because of one of your associations, you are partially on the hook for that. And no amount of...
I f***ing hate that Tom Cruise has, like, managed to keep his reputation intact despite all the, like, the fact that he's just a living ad for Scientology. I mean, that's probably why he's managed to keep it intact, is that there's probably a lot of money and power going into building his platform, but, like, and to make sure that he looks good and people like him. But, whoa! That was close to death. Wow. Oof. But God, I f***ing hate Tom Cruise. He's a literal living ad for Scientology. That's his purpose in life at this point, is to be an ad for Scientology.
Screaming guilt by association is gonna make that fact not true. Okay, so where do we go from here? It seems like the golden days of anti-SJWism are coming to an end. Well, I actually don't know how it's gonna play out. That's a question for someone who has been doing this longer than me, and I'm sure this person could also address various factors I left out, like Gamergate and such. I never went nearly as far as I described earlier down the anti-SJW vortex, but that may have been just pure luck. One day I was working on something with YouTube running in the background, and after about half an hour, I checked what it actually was that was running in the background while I wasn't paying attention. YouTube's algorithm, together with the autoplay feature, had led me to a compilation of Black Lives Matter protesters being run over by cars. And that led me to evaluate what kind of content I was watching and how...
Snowflakes, the Snowflake Brigade. That's the thumbnail. Jesus Christ.
What might influence my political opinions and if they hold any water. And to those who weren't as fortunate as me, there's really no reason to feel ashamed for buying into the whole anti-SJW thing in the past. The people who further this kind of stuff to the point of a conspiratorial worldview are the ones who are embarrassing themselves. And that's it for today, folks.
True. What a good video. God, I love this video. I really miss this era of content. I miss when, like, lefty content creators who are doing, like, the video essay stuff made videos like this. It feels so... like, it's so effective. There's really nothing else to call it other than it's effective. Old breadtube hit different, dude. It hit different. I just got back. Are gingers in favor? No, we are currently not favoring gingers after that clip, I'm afraid. Did you have to leave because of all the bigotry against gingers? Was just making it too much for you? It was a triggering moment. Anyway, yeah, go definitely check out that video. That was amazing. I really don't have much else to say.